They protected a human child. So Earth raised their banner beside our own. The alarms started screaming at 0300 station time. Corporal Dae-jung was awake before his feet hit the cold metal floor. He grabbed his weapon and ran toward the security center, his heart pounding hard in his chest. Around him, other security officers were doing the same thing. Something was very wrong. The main screen in the security center showed 3 ships closing in fast. They were not friendly ships. Dae-jung recognized them immediately. Pirates, the Haken Raiders to be exact. They were the worst kind of criminals in this part of space. They killed people without thinking twice about it. Captain Vornall, the station's security chief, was already giving orders. He was a Kelrath, one of the insect-like aliens who ran most of the station's operations. His forearms moved quickly across the control panels as he tried to raise the station's shields. But the pirates had been smart. They had damaged the shield generators before anyone knew they were coming. All civilians to the emergency shelters, Vornall ordered. His voice was calm, but Dae-jung could hear the fear underneath it. Security teams, protect the evacuation routes. Dae-jung ran to his assigned position near the civilian quarters. People were already flooding out of their rooms, scared and confused. Human families mixed with Kelrath workers and a dozen other species, all trying to get to safety. Parents carried small children. Old people moved as fast as they could. Everyone was afraid. That was when Dae-jung saw her. Ji-woo. She was only 6 years old, the daughter of 2 human engineers who worked on the station. She was standing alone in the corridor, tears running down her face. She was calling for her mother. Dae-jung ran to her. "Ji-woo, where are your parents?" "I don't know," the little girl cried. "We got separated. Everyone was pushing and I fell down, and when I got up they were gone." An explosion shook the station. The lights flickered. Dae-jung could hear weapons fire getting closer. The pirates were cutting through the outer sections fast. "Too fast, okay, listen to me," Dae-jung said, kneeling down to look Ji-woo in the eyes. "I need to get you to safety. Can you be brave for me?" Ji-woo nodded, but she was shaking. Dae-jung picked her up and started running toward the nearest emergency shelter. But another explosion ripped through the corridor ahead of them. Metal twisted and tore. The lights went completely dark. Emergency lights came on, painting everything in red. The path to the shelter was blocked. Dae-jung's communication device crackled with static. He was cut off from the rest of the security team. He looked around quickly. There was another way to safety, through the station's maintenance sections. It would take longer, but it was the only choice now. He ran through the dark corridors with Ji-woo held tight against his chest. The little girl had stopped crying. She just held on to him and stayed quiet. Behind them, Dae-jung could hear the pirates getting closer. They were laughing and shouting to each other. They were enjoying this. Dae-jung turned a corner and almost ran into a group of Kelrath civilians. There were about 15 of them, huddled together in a damaged section of the station. They had been cut off from the evacuation too. When they saw Dae-jung and Ji-woo, they moved aside to let them pass. "The way ahead is blocked," one of the Kelrath said. His name was Velthar. Dae-jung had seen him around the station before. He worked in one of the science labs. "There is structural damage. We cannot get through." Dae-jung checked his weapon. He had 1 rifle and 3 spare energy packs. Not much if the pirates found them. He looked at the Kelrath. They had no weapons at all. The Kelrath never carried weapons. Their whole culture was built on peace and nonviolence. In 10,000 years of recorded history, they had never fought a war. "We need to hide," Dae-jung said. "Get away from this area and find another route to the shelters." But it was too late. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. The pirates had found them. 5 Haken Raiders came around the corner, their weapons raised. They were big creatures nearly 7 feet tall with thick armor and cruel faces. "Well, look at this," the lead pirate said. "Bugs and a human. And a little human baby, too. She will be worth good money." Dae-jung stepped in front of Ji-woo, his rifle aimed at the pirates. "Back off now," the pirate laughed. "1 human with 1 gun. You think you can stop all of us?" Dae-jung did not lower his weapon. His mind was racing. He could maybe take down 2 of them before they killed him, but that would leave 3 pirates and a group of defenseless civilians. And Ji-woo. He could not let them take Ji-woo. That was when something incredible happened. The Kelrath moved. All 15 of them stepped forward and formed a circle around Ji-woo. They did not have weapons. They did not have armor. They just stood there with their thin bodies and their forearms spread wide. creating a living wall between the little girl and the pirates. "Move," the lead pirate ordered. The Kelrath did not move. I said move. The pirate raised his weapon and fired. The first Kelrath fell, then the second. The pirates were shooting now, trying to break through the circle. But every time one Kelrath fell, another stepped forward to fill the gap. They were protecting Jiwoo with their own bodies. Dae-jung was shooting too. He dropped one pirate, then another. But there were too many of them. More were coming. The corridor was filled with weapons fire and smoke and screams. 3 Kelrath were dead. 5 more were badly wounded, but they did not break the circle. They did not run. They just stood there protecting a child that was not even their own species. Velthar, blood leaking from wounds in his thorax, looked back at Dae-jung. "Protect her," he said. "That is what matters." Then Captain Vornal and the rest of the security team came crashing through from another corridor. They had heard the fighting and cut their way through the damaged sections to reach them. The remaining pirates were killed or captured in seconds. When it was over, Dae-jung stood in the middle of the carnage. Jiwoo was safe, still surrounded by the Kelrath who had given everything to protect her. 3 of them were dead. 5 more would die later from their wounds. The rest were injured but alive. Captain Vornal looked at his people, at the bodies of the Kelrath who had violated every principle of their culture to save one human child. He did not say anything. There were no words. Dae-jung knelt down and held Jiwoo. The little girl was crying again, but she was alive. Around them, the surviving Kelrath were being treated by medics. They had done something that no one thought possible. They had fought. They had killed. They had died. All to save a child. News of what happened spread through the station within minutes. Then it spread beyond the station. Within hours, every human settlement in space knew the story. The Kelrath, the most peaceful species in the known galaxy, had sacrificed themselves to protect a human child. And humanity would never forget it. Jiwoo reached up and touched Dae-jung's face. "The bug people saved me," she said. "Are they okay?" Dae-jung looked at the bodies being carried away. He looked at Velthar, barely alive, being loaded onto a medical stretcher. He looked at Captain Vornal, who was standing alone, his forearms wrapped around himself in a Kelrath gesture of grief. Yes, Dae-jung lied to the little girl. They are going to be okay. But he knew the truth. The Kelrath had paid a terrible price, and somehow, some way, humanity would have to find a way to honor that sacrifice. They protected a human child, so Earth raised their banner beside our own. The video reached Earth 2 days after the attack on Kova-9. Someone had recorded everything on their communication device. The galaxy watched as the Kelrath formed their circle around Jiwoo. They watched as the peaceful beings fell one by one, never breaking their formation. They watched as they died to protect a child who was not their own. President Da-un watched the video in her office. She watched it 3 times. By the 3rd time, tears were running down her face. Her advisors stood quietly around her. No one spoke. What could anyone say? "How many?" the president finally asked. 8 Kelrath dead, her military advisor answered. 12 more injured. 3 of those will probably not survive. And the child? Safe, not a scratch on her. The Kelrath made sure of that. President Da-un stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of the city. Millions of humans going about their lives. None of them knew yet what had happened. But they would soon. And when they did, everything would change. "Get me Ambassador Hyojin," the president said. "And Admiral Taemin. I want them both here within the hour. And prepare a broadcast. I need to speak to Earth. I need to speak to all of humanity." 6 hours later, President Da-un stood before the cameras. Behind her was the flag of United Earth. But something was different. Next to the Earth flag was another flag. The flag of the Kelrath homeworld. 2 flags side by side. "My fellow humans," the president began. "By now, many of you have seen the video from Kova-9. You have seen what the Kelrath did. They died to protect one of our children. They did not have to. They gained nothing from it. They simply saw a child in danger and they acted." The president paused. Her voice was shaking. "The Kelrath are a peaceful people. For 10,000 years, they have never raised a weapon against anyone. But when our child needed them, they stood between her and death. 8 of them are gone. 8 beings who will never go home to their families. They died so that Jiwoo could live. Around the world, humans stopped what they were doing. They watched their president speak. In homes and offices, in ships and stations, on Mars and the Moon and the orbital colonies, humanity listened. I have spoken with the Kelrath leadership, President Dayun continued. They say they only did what was right. They say any decent being would have done the same. But we know better. What they did was beyond duty, beyond law. It was pure courage and pure love. The president turned slightly and gestured to the two flags behind her. From this day forward, the flag of the Kelrath will fly beside our own at United Earth headquarters. We declare the Kelrath to be brothers and sisters of humanity. Any attack on Kelrath civilians will be treated as an attack on human civilians. Any threat to their worlds will be met with the full force of Earth's military. The announcement sent shockwaves across human space. Within hours, ships began moving. Not military ships. Not at first. These were cargo ships and transport vessels. They came from Earth, they came from Mars, they came from every human colony and station. They were all heading to one place, the Kelrath homeworld of Keltara. Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the fleet assemble. There were hundreds of ships now. More were coming every hour. He had been ordered to take his third fleet to Keltara. His job was to protect the Kelrath from any future attacks. But the fleet around him was not just military. There were hospital ships carrying human doctors who had volunteered to treat the wounded Kelrath. There were engineering ships filled with people who wanted to help rebuild what the pirates had damaged. There were transports loaded with medical supplies, food, building materials, and technology. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we are getting messages from the Kelrath government. They say this is too much. They say they do not need all this help." Admiral Taemin smiled grimly. "Tell them it does not matter what they need. This is what they are getting. They bled for us. Now we stand for them." On Keltara, the Kelrath watched in amazement as human ships filled their orbit. They had expected nothing. Maybe a message of thanks. Maybe a small memorial, but this was beyond anything they could have imagined. Ambassador Hyejin arrived on Keltara with a delegation of human diplomats. She met with Matriarch Selvara, the spiritual and political leader of the Kelrath people. The meeting was broadcast live across the galaxy. "We cannot accept this," Matriarch Selvara said. Her translator device made her clicking sounds into words that humans could understand. "What our people did on Kova 9 was simply the right thing to do. We do not expect payment or reward." Ambassador Hyejin leaned forward. "This is not payment. This is family. Your people died for one of ours. That makes you family, and we protect our family. But we do not have the resources to repay such generosity. We do not want repayment. We want you to be safe. We want you to know that you are not alone anymore. When someone threatens you, they threaten us. When you need help, we will be there. Always." The matriarch was quiet for a long moment. Then she made a sound that the translator could not interpret. But humans who had worked with Kelrath before knew what it meant. She was crying. Back on Earth, another ceremony was taking place. Youngsu, Jiwoo's father, stood before a massive crowd. His daughter stood next to him holding his hand. Behind them were the families of the 8 Kelrath who had died. They had been brought to Earth for the memorial service. Youngsu could barely speak. He kept looking down at his daughter, at her small hand in his. She was alive because beings from another world had chosen to die. "My daughter asks me every night if the Kelrath who saved her are safe," Youngsu said into the microphone. "She draws pictures of them. She talks about them before she goes to sleep. She does not understand why they are gone. I do not know how to explain it to her." The crowd was silent. Millions more watched from around the world and across human space. "But I can tell her this," Youngsu continued. "I can tell her that humanity will never forget. I can tell her that we will protect the Kelrath just as they protected her. We owe them a debt that spans generations, and humanity always pays its debts." The crowd erupted in applause, but it was not celebration. It was agreement. It was a promise. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy watched in confusion. Elder races who had been traveling the stars for thousands of years could not understand what they were seeing. Species did not form bonds like this. Not so quickly. Not so completely. There were alliances, yes, trade agreements and defense pacts, but this was something else. One ambassador from an elder race spoke at the Galactic Assembly. "The humans are being emotional and irrational," he said. "They are committing massive resources to protect a species that offers them little in return. This makes no strategic sense. Ambassador Hai Jin stood to respond. She was calm, but her eyes were hard. You are correct, she said. This makes no strategic sense. But humanity does not calculate the value of life based on strategy. The Kelrath saw a child in danger and they acted without thought for themselves. We see a people who prove their courage and kindness, and we act without thought for profit or advantage. She looked around the assembly chamber at the hundreds of alien species represented there. Perhaps that seems irrational to you, she continued. Perhaps you think we are fools. But we would rather be fools who stand by our friends than wise calculators who stand alone. The chamber was quiet. Some species nodded in understanding. Others looked uncertain. But all of them recognized that something new had entered galactic politics. Humanity had made a statement that could not be ignored. On Kova 9, Corporal Daejung visited the memorial that had been built in the corridor where the Kelrath had died. 8 names were carved into the wall. 8 lives given freely. He stood there for a long time, his hand resting on the cold metal. Behind him, he heard small footsteps. He turned to see Jiwoo. Her parents were with her, but they let her walk forward alone. She was carrying flowers, a human tradition that she wanted to share. Jiwoo placed the flowers at the base of the memorial. Then she put her hand on the wall on the name of Veltar. Thank you, she whispered. I will remember you forever. And watching from Earth and Keltara and 1,000 other human worlds, millions of people made the same promise. They would remember. They would honor the sacrifice. They would stand with the Kelrath no matter what came. 2 flags flew side by side now, and they would never be separated. They protected a human child, so Earth raised their banner beside our own. 6 months had passed since Kova 9. Commander Byung-ho sat in the captain's chair of the UES Indomitable, a human destroyer that now patrolled Kelrath space. His crew was professional and alert. They all knew why they were here. They all remembered the video. Next to the Indomitable were 2 smaller corvettes. Together, they formed a defensive net around the Kelrath agricultural colony below. The colony was called Kelsiva. Nearly 300,000 Kelrath lived there, farming and raising families in peace. That peace was what Byung-ho was here to protect. Sir, his sensor officer called out. We have 3 ships approaching. They just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Byung-ho leaned forward. Can you identify them? Running analysis now. A pause. Then the officer's voice went cold. Sir, they are Hakan raiders. The same group from Kova 9. Every person on the bridge went still. Byung-ho felt something dark and angry rise in his chest. The Hakan. The same pirates who had attacked the station. The same ones who had caused the Kelrath to sacrifice themselves. Battle stations, Byung-ho ordered. Wake up the defense platforms. Get the colony into their shelters. And open a channel to the Hakan ships. Channel open, sir. Byung-ho stood up. He wanted them to see his face. He wanted them to see a human when they heard his words. Hakan vessels, this is Commander Byung-ho of the United Earthship Indomitable. You are in Kelrath protected space. You attacked these people once before. You harmed our brothers and sisters. You will not do so again. Turn around and leave now or you will be destroyed. On the lead Hakan ship, Raidmaster Theknor laughed. He was a massive creature, covered in scars from 100 raids. He had been raiding for 20 years. He feared nothing and no one. A human, Theknor said to his crew. 1 little destroyer and 2 toys think they can stop us. These bugs are weak, and apparently the humans who protect them are just as stupid. His crew laughed with him. They had 3 heavy cruisers, each bigger than the human destroyer. They had better weapons and more crew. This would be easy. And the Kelrath colony below would be rich with food and supplies to steal. Tell the human this, Theknor said. We are going to take what we want from this colony. If he tries to stop us, we will add his ship to our collection. If he runs now, we will let him live. The message was sent. On the Indomitable, Commander Byung-ho listened to it. His face did not change, but everyone on the bridge could feel the temperature drop. Sir, his weapons officer said quietly, we are outgunned. If we fight them, we might lose. Byung-ho looked at his crew. Good people. People with families back home. He was asking them to risk everything. I know the odds, Byung-ho said. But those people down there protected a human child when they did not have to. 8 of them died doing it. We made a promise to them. We made a promise to ourselves. So we stand, we fight, and if we die knowing we kept our word. His crew did not hesitate. Not one person objected. They all went to work preparing the ship for battle. Send a message to the Haken, Byung-ho ordered. Tell them this, you harmed our people at Kova 9, you will not harm them again. Last chance. Leave or die. Theknor laughed again when he heard the message. These humans are insane. All ships attack formation. We will crush them and take the colony. The 3 Haken cruisers moved forward, weapons charging. They were confident. They were strong. They thought they would win easily. They were wrong. Commander Byung-ho had not been sitting in orbit doing nothing for 6 months. The defense platforms that humans had helped the Kelrath build were not simple weapons. They were networked together with the human ships, creating a web of fire that could hit targets from multiple angles at once. All ships, Byung-ho ordered. Execute pattern Kova for the 8. For the 8, his crew responded. The Haken opened fire first. Their weapons were powerful, meant to break through heavy armor. But the Indomitable and her escorts were not where the Haken expected them to be. They had moved, using quick bursts of their engines to change position while the platforms provided covering fire. The human ships returned fire. But they were not aiming for the Haken's armor. They were aiming for specific weak points. Engine systems, weapon arrays, sensor clusters. Every shot was precisely calculated. Target their communications, Byung-ho ordered. I do not want them talking to each other. Isolate them. The human weapons did their work. Within minutes, the 3 Haken ships could not communicate with each other. Each one was fighting alone, confused and angry. Theknor realized too late that he had made a mistake. These humans were not like the other species he had raided. They fought with a cold fury that he had never seen before. Every move they made was designed to hurt him. Every shot found its mark, evasive maneuvers. Theknor screamed. Get us out of here! But it was too late for that too. The human ships and the defense platforms had created a killing field. There was nowhere to run. One Haken cruiser exploded when a human torpedo found its reactor. The second lost all power and went spinning into space, dead in the water. Theknor's own ship was crippled, bleeding atmosphere and fuel. Commander Byung-ho opened a channel. Haken vessels, surrender now or you will all die. Theknor wanted to fight. He wanted to go down shooting. But his ship was dying. His crew was dying. And he knew in that moment that he had been beaten by beings who fought for something more than profit. We surrender, Theknor said. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. Human Marines boarded the crippled Haken ships. They secured the surviving pirates and treated their wounded. They were professional and efficient. But every Marine wore a patch on their shoulder. A simple patch with 8 stars, 1 star for each Kelrath who had died at Kova 9. Commander Byung-ho himself led the boarding of Theknor's ship. He found the raidmaster in the command center, wounded but alive. Theknor looked up at the human with hatred in his eyes. You got lucky, Theknor said. Byung-ho knelt down so he was at eye level with the pirate. No, you got unlucky. You chose to attack people who cannot defend themselves, and you did it after we told the entire galaxy that we would protect them. Did you really think we were lying? They are just bugs. Weak bugs. Byung-ho grabbed Theknor by his armor and pulled him close. Those bugs died to save a child. That makes them braver than you will ever be, and we are going to make sure that everyone knows what happens when you hurt them. The prisoners were taken to a human ship, but before they could be turned over to Galactic Assembly authorities, Commander Byung-ho did something that shocked the galaxy. He broadcast an interview with Theknor across open channels. Every species could watch. Every government could see. Tell them, Byung-ho said to the captured raidmaster. Tell them why you attacked Kelsiva. Theknor glared at him but said nothing. Let me tell them then, Byung-ho said, turning to the camera. The Haken attacked this colony because they thought the Kelrath were easy targets. They thought a peaceful species would not fight back. They saw kindness as weakness. Byung-ho gestured to Theknor. This creature and his people were at Kova 9. They killed 8 Kelrath who were just trying to protect a child. And today they came back for more. They thought we would not stop them. The commander's voice dropped low, dangerous. They were wrong. The Kelrath are not alone anymore. They are not defenseless. They have us. And we will be there every single time. Every attack. Every threat. Every danger. We will be there. He looked directly into the camera. Let this be a message to every pirate and raider in the galaxy. The Kelrath are under human protection now. If you harm them, you harm us. And if you harm us, we will find you. We will stop you. And we will make sure you never threaten anyone again. The broadcast ended, But the message spread across the galaxy like fire. Other pirate groups heard it. Criminal organizations heard it. Even some governments heard it and took note. Humanity was serious. Absolutely serious. On Kelsiva, the Kelrath colonists emerged from their shelters. They looked up at the human ships in orbit. They had been saved again, not by their own strength, but by beings who refused to let them be hurt. Elder Kel Shan, one of the survivors from Kova 9, stood in the central plaza of the colony. Around him, young Kelrath gathered to hear him speak. It had become a tradition. Every night he told the story of what happened on the station. Why did they do it? A young Kelrath asked. Why do the humans protect us so fiercely? Kelshan looked up at the stars, at the human ships standing guard. Because we protected one of theirs when we did not have to. Because we showed them that even the weakest among us will stand for what is right. And because humans remember. They remember kindness, they remember sacrifice, and they never forget. The young Kelrath was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, will they always be there? Yes, Kelshan said with certainty. They will always be there. And in orbit above them, Commander Byung-ho made the same promise to himself and his crew. They would always be there. No matter the cost, no matter the danger, the Kelrath had stood for humanity once. Now humanity would stand for them forever. They protected a human child, so Earth raised their banner. Beside our own 2 years after Kova 9, Dr. Sun-hee stood in a laboratory that did not exist 2 years ago. Half of the equipment was human-made. The other half was Kelrath designed. The two styles should have clashed. They should have been incompatible, but somehow they worked together perfectly, just like the people in the lab. Sun-hee's research partner was a Kelrath named Velthar, not the same Velthar who died on Kova 9, but his brother. When the human Kelrath exchange program started, this Velthar had volunteered immediately. He wanted to honor his brother's memory by building something good with the humans. The results are confirmed, Velthar said, his forearms moving excitedly across the data screens. The treatment works. We have actually done it. Sun-hee felt tears in her eyes. They had been working on this for 18 months. Combining human medical knowledge with Kelrath biological understanding. The result was a treatment that could extend lifespans for multiple species. Humans could live longer. Kelrath could live longer. Even some of the elder races could benefit. We need to publish this, Sun-hee said. The whole galaxy needs to see what we built together. The announcement of the treatment sent waves through the scientific community. Researchers from dozens of species wanted to know how it worked. How had humans and Kelrath, working together for such a short time, achieved what elder races had not managed in thousands of years? The answer was simple. The humans and Kelrath were not just colleagues. They were family. They trusted each other completely. They shared everything with no hesitation. There were no secrets between them. No competition. Just cooperation built on a foundation of sacrifice and gratitude. But the research was just one part of the bond that was forming. On Earth, human children now learned the Kelrath language in school. On Keltara, young Kelrath studied human history and culture. Exchange programs brought families together. Humans lived on Kelrath worlds. Kelrath lived on human colonies. Captain Mi-young stood on the bridge of a ship unlike any other in the galaxy. The vessel was called the Unity. It had been designed by both species working together. Half the crew was human, half was Kelrath. They wore uniforms that combined both cultures. And the ship flew under 2 flags side by side. All systems ready, Mi-young announced. We are prepared to begin our mission. The Unity was an exploration vessel. Its job was to find new worlds, make contact with new species, and expand knowledge for both humans and Kelrath. This was the first joint mission of its kind. Not just an alliance, not just a partnership. True integration. Navigation, set course for the outer reaches, Mi-young ordered. Let us see what is out there. As the Unity jumped into faster-than-light travel, both Earth and Keltara celebrated. This was the future they had built together. A future where 2 species could truly become one people across 2 worlds. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy about it. Chancellor Kranoth stood before the Galactic Assembly and voiced concerns that many elder races felt but were afraid to say out loud. The Human-Kelrath alliance is unprecedented, Kranoth said. His species had been part of the Assembly for 5,000 years. They considered themselves wise and experienced. It is happening too fast. They are integrating too completely. This could upset the balance of power in the galaxy. Ambassador He-Jin listened quietly. She had heard these complaints before. Some species were jealous. Others were worried. A few were simply confused by what they were seeing. With respect, Chancellor, He-Jin said when it was her turn to speak. What you call upsetting the balance, we call building a family. Yes, the integration is happening quickly, but that is because both species want it. Both species benefit from it. Both species are stronger together. But what about the rest of us? Another ambassador asked. What happens if other species want similar protection from humanity? Will you extend the same offer to everyone? He-Jin thought carefully before answering. This was a question that Earth's government had debated many times. We will not abandon the Kelrath, she said firmly. That relationship is sacred to us. But we are not opposed to forming other alliances, if another species proves themselves to be beings of courage and kindness. If they show us that they share our values, then yes, we would consider extending our protection. She paused and looked around the chamber. But understand this, we do not give our loyalty easily. The Kelrath earned it by dying for our child. That set a very high standard. The assembly chamber buzzed with conversation. Some species began to wonder, could they earn human loyalty? Did they want to? And what would the galaxy look like if more species formed bonds like the humans and Kelrath? On a newly discovered world at the edge of explored space, the Unity's crew worked together to set up the first colony markers. This world would belong to both species. Humans and Kelrath would settle here together. They would build cities together, raise children together. A human engineer named Tae-sung worked next to a Kelrath builder named Selvak. They were assembling the first habitat structures. As they worked, they talked about their families. Tae-sung showed pictures of his 2 children. Selvak described her 3 offspring who were still young. Do you think our children will understand? Selvak asked. Will they understand why this bond between our species is so important? Tae-sung thought about it. My daughter's the same age as Jiwoo was when KOVA-9 happened. I told her the story. She cried when she heard about the Kelrath who died. Then she asked me a question. What question? She asked if we would do the same. If we would die to protect Kelrath children. What did you tell her? Tae-sung looked at his Kelrath friend. I told her yes. Without hesitation. Just as your people did not hesitate to protect ours. Selvak made a sound that her translator did not catch. But Tae-sung had worked with Kelrath long enough to recognize it. It was the sound they made when they were deeply moved. Back on Earth, Jiwoo was 8 years old now. She attended a school where human and Kelrath children learned together. She had Kelrath friends. She could speak their language as well as she spoke her own. And every year on the anniversary of KOVA-9, she participated in the memorial ceremony. This year, she had written a speech. Her parents sat in the audience as she stood at the podium in front of thousands of people. The ceremony was also being broadcast across both Earth and Keltara. My name is Jiwoo, she began. Her voice was small but clear. When I was 6, some very brave Kelrath saved my life. I do not remember all of it. I remember being scared. I remember the loud noises. But I remember the Kelrath standing around me. I remember feeling safe because they were there. She looked down at her notes, then back up at the crowd. I know that 8 of them died. I know their names. I say their names every night before I sleep. I want them to know that I remember. I want them to know that I am trying to be worth what they gave. The crowd was silent. Thousands of people listened to this child who had become a symbol of something much larger than herself. People ask me what I want to be when I grow up, Jiwoo continued. I want to be someone who builds bridges between humans and Kelrath. I want to help make sure that what they did was not wasted. I want both our peoples to be together forever. When she finished, the crowd stood and applauded. But it was not just humans applauding. Half the crowd was Kelrath. They stood on their 4 legs and clicked their mandibles in the Kelrath expression of approval and respect. On Keltara, a young Kelrath named Kilvin watched the broadcast. She was the daughter of one of the 8 who died on KOVA-9. She had been only 3 years old when she lost her father. Now she was 5, and she was old enough to understand what had happened. Mother, Kilvin asked, do you think father would be happy? About all of this? About humans and Kelrath being together? Her mother thought about her mate, about the being who had given his life to protect a child of another species. Yes, she said. I think he would be very happy. This is what he died for, not just to save one child, but to show that different peoples can care for each other, can love each other. can become family. The galaxy was changing, slowly at first but then faster. Other species began to form closer alliances, inspired by what they saw between humans and Kelrath. The old ways, the distant and formal relationships between species, were starting to feel outdated, and at the center of it all were two flags, flying side by side, a symbol of what was possible when beings chose to stand for each other, when they chose family over profit, loyalty over strategy, and love over fear. The bond was deep now, unbreakable. Humans and Kelrath were not just allies anymore. They were not just friends. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were one people with two homeworlds, and nothing would ever separate them again.